Welcome, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started. We're trying some new technology. How is the visibility? Okay, is this thing directly in anybody's way? Okay, we tried to kind of put it in the middle of the path. So, this is our new to us projector from Southeast Uplift. And then we've now added this really cool stand. So we could possibly do, yeah, it's donated. We could possibly do movies outside or things like that. So, but let's say thank you, Southeast Uplift. All right, and we're going to get going. Is Carol here today? I know that they're doing lots of events at both Woodstock and Holgate, and that they're coming up on their tax prep events. So those are either open or opening soon. Keep an eye open for those. Is Mary here from Leach? No? Okay. Leach, the 122nd Avenue Bridge is still being worked on, and there are lots of events coming up there. So look at our newsletter we sent out with the agenda for this meeting. And there's all those events and updates. Okay. Esther, what about schools? Do we have anything?
Just they're working on beautifying Lane, Woodmere, and Whitman. And the Lane is still doing their ongoing scan and bottle drive. I haven't really been in touch with them to find out what their reasons are for any of the PTs. But getting the house is interesting anymore, so staying. So I'll be better at connecting them to PTAs and finding out what their needs and whatnot. I do believe that Lane is still going to do their beautification at the school. I'm not sure if it's going to be in April or May, but they'll need volunteers for that.
Is that their spring cleanup day?
Their spring cleanup. And, yeah, I think that's all I have to share.
I do have...
If anybody wants to donate bottles that don't have, like, paper sacks or whatever, they don't want them gathered around, I do have the green bags with the Lane sticker, so I can supply people with the bags. All they, fill them, and then they can say, hey, extra a bag full, or they can drop them on my dashboard.
Excellent.
I am still taking your bottles.
Thank you. Thank you, Esther. I do have one update from Woodmere. Their pantry shelves are bare. They packed over 30 backpacks today, and a bunch of their donations have fallen through because of the weather. So several donations didn't get dropped off, and they did get one small donation today. But this is their wish list, and I don't know how many people know this, but their director had a family emergency at the end of the year and had to quit and move out of state. And the new director, Mackenzie, is a neighbor here in the neighborhood. She's amazing. She's doing a great job, but she is running at a huge disadvantage because she's having to pick up as she can. So they could really use donations. Definitely contact them. And let's see. Do we have anyone from Community Watch? Okay. What about Luke? Are you here? Oh. Come in here. Here. Yeah.
Is there another guest speaker besides me? Okay,
That's
I
you.
moved the parking spot.
Yep, that's you. I'm gonna make you talk here soon anyway. All right, so I do know the Learning Garden Lab is having their annual Farm to Fork dinner coming up, and that is going to be Saturday, August 10th. So these are our upcoming events for the neighborhood that we know of. Mark your calendars, more details to come. And then I have a few other announcements. The BDNA has an official swag shop now. So if you'd like to show your neighborhood pride, you can order a cute mug. This is the small size, the large size is up there. The shirts are all the same price regardless of size. And all the proceeds go to the BDNA. So support us. We make about $4 to $5 an item. Unfortunately, it's expensive to do this kind of stuff, but it's fun to see neighborhood pride. And if board members, if we would like to do a big order, I can do a big order for board members. And neighbors who want to get in on that can email me and we can order it as a bulk. So,
Thank you for setting that up.
but
Are there other products, Chelsea?
these are our first 5. We can host 5 products for free.
Okay.
If we want to have a more robust store, we will need to pay for it. So this shop is completely free to us.
Oh, okay.
We can host the items free, and the print service is an on-demand direct ship. So the customers order, it sends an order to the print company who prints it and ships it to them directly. And we get a cut minus their fees of both sites. So that's what, we're not going to make a whole lot, but it's a way for people to donate and show their pride. So, any more?
Just awesome.
Oh, okay.
Well, I think
So-
the Learning Gardens Lab might sell those logo totes at their farm stand.
That we could definitely order a bulk order. We can also, this is just a sampling of the items we have board members. We can order all sorts of things, even beach towels. I was thinking commemorative Arrow Heights Park opening beach towels would be fun for the splash pad and things like that. So kind of throw that in your mind. We'll talk about that more in the second
There
half.
have been baseball caps. right?
Yep, yep, we're going to talk about that more too.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, another announcement, if you haven't seen it, new speed limits on 72nd and 45th, 46th. They've lowered them to 25, and I enjoy being a pedestrian a little bit more in those areas now. So, watch out, don't get a ticket. It's February, so there's free spay and neuter for feral and stray cats. So if you're feeding one, get it humanely trapped and in. I can vouch that this program is fantastic. They nip their ears, they fix them, and they're really good at pest control. And then one of our BDNA work plan items is advertising Meal Train. So Meal Train helps you help others. We know food pantries are short right now, so if you know somebody who is experiencing a hardship or a family event where they might not be able to cook, you can set it up on Meal Train and have friends, family, neighbors volunteer to bring meals. So if you have any questions, let us know. All right. Now, do we have any other announcements?
Shannon.
Yeah, Shannon.
So the Portland Area CSA Coalition, that's the, it's an organization that supports community-supported agriculture farmers in the Portland metro area. We're having our event, our annual Share Fair event on March 10th. I can have Chelsea post it, and it'll be up for other people to get the information, but there's matchmaking where you can match you with a farmer and what program works for you. There's chef demos, there's kids activities, and it's a free event. So if you're interested, I have the information, I can give it to you. Is it Chelsea that put it up? So, it's at the Eco Trust, the Red, the new renovated building that they have. There will be about 40 to 45 farmers there, and we expect around 1,500 people. So, yeah, it's a really big event. It's great, and Patagonia is sponsoring, so they'll be there.
Yep. This is our open announcement. Go for it.
Leo with Southeast Uplift.
Oh, can you come stand up here?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Leo with Southeast Uplift. I just wanted to let folks know, if you haven't already seen, the Office of Community and Civic Life, who's the office that funds coalitions, supports neighborhood associations, is having a community conversation around a code update to update kind of the language of the neighborhood system, so that includes the neighborhood associations. And so they're hosting an English conversation on Tuesday, February 12th, so it's next Tuesday. That said, I think we're getting a ton of snow before then, so look for potential rescheduling of that. But just if you want it, there's been a survey that's been going around, so that's been another way that folks can weigh in. But this is an opportunity to weigh in on pros and cons of the system and the process moving forward. Sure, it won't be the last, but it would be helpful if you're curious and want to weigh in on that. So.
Can we get a link to that survey? Awesome.
Yes, yeah.
And are there any
Yeah.
plans to broadcast that live or record it for people to be able to participate if they can?
I don't think they're broadcasting it live, but I've heard from them, so it's in person, but then there's also the survey as well.
Okay. All right. Any other community announcements? I think I'm out of announcements, so we are going to, We do have upcoming meetings, and I know it's a long list, but I want your eye to go all the way to the bottom to board elections. If you live in the neighborhood, own property in the neighborhood, work in the neighborhood, or just feel that you are Brentwood Darlington, you can join the board. So be aware of that. Elections are coming up. I start telling you now, so it's not a surprise. And we do have another one to note. On March 12th, PDX will be doing a presentation here in the building about what they're doing. And we'll have more information about that to put on our website soon. And now we have a special guest.
Hi.
State Rep Karen Power.
Hi. Do you want me to stand for those of you in the back, or if I speak up, can you hear me okay?
You can sit. I
Okay.
can hear you.
Sit.
Just yell.
Okay, I will. Thanks for having me tonight. I love my neighborhood associations because I think I have one of the coolest, best, we all think we have the best districts. But I try to get to each of our neighborhood associations at least once during my 2-year term. And I will be taking a brief reprieve during session because I have committees every single day of the week, and it just makes it a little dicey when meetings run late, but we got you in early, so I'm thrilled to be here. I wanted to give you a quick overview of my work on behalf of you this session. Some of the bills that I brought, some of the other constituent things that were elevated to our office that we're bringing, and then really turn it over for questions, because I spent a lot of time hearing us legislators talk, and I don't need to do that all night too. So the governor teed us off this year by talking about sort of the big structural unfinished business priorities that we've been working on for the last several sessions, and for some of my colleagues for the last 18 years. It's been a long time. So I'd say the big themes of this session are working on housing affordability and tenant protections, continuing to fund our Medicaid expansion under our Oregon Health Plan. Those dollars are up for reauthorization, and we need to come up with our funding package. And tackling climate change and having Oregon do its part in reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. And then finally, the big one that we got very, very close to getting over the finish line in 2017 is reforming the way that we do taxation in the state of Oregon, and I mean corporate taxation. It may provide some benefits for moderate income families and low income families if we do something similar to what was proposed in 2017. But essentially, upwards of 85% of our state general fund comes from our personal income taxes, because as corporations increasingly restructure the way that they count things as revenue and income over the last 20 years, we have not kept our state code up to date. Other states have changed the way that they tax corporations to get a more even benefit level from them. But we used to have somewhere between 12 to 15% of our state revenue come from corporations, and now we're down to about 6%. And that hit, as you can imagine, is part of what creates those sort of peaks and valleys. So when we do well as a state, and our state has full employment, and we're all contributing our personal income taxes to the state, we're doing really well. That's why you're seeing the kicker kick. We're doing better than even our state economists forecasted that we were going to do. We've heard rumblings that, of course, expansion can't always sustain itself indefinitely, and we'll have some sort of stabilization at some point in time, and then, you know, with booms and busts, we may see a recession down the road. We don't know how deep it'll be, but when people get laid off or companies downsize, our overall state general fund takes that hit predominantly. And so what happens first is the people who need services the most when they're not at full employment are getting served the least. So we've been trying to reform this, and I joked, our revenue house co-chair, Phil Barnhart, just retired after 17 years of service to the legislature. He represented down by Eugene, and he had been working on reforming our state corporate taxation for the exact same number of years that he'd been in the building. It's been long overdue, and I am entirely confident we're going to need to get it over the finish line this year. We got really close. Embedded in that is a discussion of cost containment and transparency, which I'm happy to get into. I know I got swept up into a number of bills and was, I think, on the front page of the Oregonian for a PERS bill that's not mine, but our senator's instead, because she does much more complex workforce work on her side of the chamber than I do in my judiciary and carbon chambers. But I'm happy to touch on sort of the ideas I've heard out there, and I don't have a lot of visibility yet because we're so new into session, what is real and what is not real. But we're sort of at the stage right now where if you have an idea, you have to get it in now. So there's tons of bills being filed, many of which will never see the light of day. But they can be placeholders for vehicles and other bill ideas later. So with that kind of broad overview, I wanted to touch on a little bit, especially if you haven't heard me speak, who I am and how I play into the overall team of Oregon House Democrats. I'm the second youngest woman serving in the Oregon House Legislature, third youngest in our chamber overall. My day job, I work as a nonprofit environmental attorney for a nonprofit in downtown Portland, and my wife's a teacher. We have a 2.5-year-old, and we were just able to buy our first house while I was running for office the first time around.
Nice.
So my colleagues have owned their houses for a much longer period of time, because many of them tend to be retired or sort of mid-career or later career. So the things that I end up bringing are issues around, I'd say broadly LGBT issues. I end up running point on those. Because I'm on judiciary, I end up working on some of the civil rights issues, and I can touch on those. I am less working on some of the criminal justice reform things, but I am on the committee that will be hearing those. So incarceration, broadly everything having to do with how we regulate guns will come through my committee. Everything around civil, anything civil related, Department of Corrections, that sort of thing. I try to keep, except for constituent requests, bill requests, things that have impacted you, I try to keep my lanes pretty focused to the things that I know and can speak to or have professional expertise in, because across the 38 of us, we've got a pretty great breadth of skill. I have a colleague that has 250 employees. I have other colleagues that are business consultants. I have colleagues that have worked in higher education, those on school boards, those who come from local government service like me. We have farmers, we have, let's see, who else is new? I got some great new colleagues too, it's super fun. So we're all kind of figuring out where we're gonna play our role in the things that we're passionate about. Because of my day job, I end up doing a lot of the environmental work. So this session, I am on predominantly just 2 committees, which gives me the ability to vote something out of committee or not. And that's sort of our threshold check on whether it's a good bill should pass or not. And it gives me the opportunity to work on things within my committees. The speaker assigns us to committees based on our strengths, but I can tell you we weren't anticipating having so many House Democrats this year. We had a super unexpected but delightful supermajority. I like my new colleagues a lot. And I'm thrilled that so many of them worked hard and won their races. But I got taken off a bunch of the environmental committees that I was previously on, including our budget subcommittee. And I'm really only on 2 committees meeting all the time. One is the House Judiciary Committee, which oversees civil, criminal, correctional issues, and those. And I'm co-chair on the House side of our joint committee on carbon. So I joke that the speaker has given me one job, and it is to aggregate all of the public feedback, all of the stakeholder feedback around our cap and trade bill, and get that over the finish line as one of our priorities for the state. So I'm excited about that. Just a couple other things that I wanted to touch on in case those are of interest to you. I'm working on a bunch of bills around public records transparency with our Society for Professional Journalists for the state. I'm working broadly on workplace issues. Oregon has not updated its pregnancy and breastfeeding accommodation statutes in about 11 years. So we're, at this point, we've dropped out. We're not consistent with federal law, and it is in dire need of some language modernization. So I brought 2 bills, which got me some press, you might have seen, because I wanted to illustrate that nobody likes to do these things when you're pregnant. So I brought my my old breast pump to a chamber to explain to my colleagues that, people are not asking for breaks for fun. That's
great.
I am working on a bill around promoting affordable condo construction so we can get more affordable points of entry for home ownership. I'm part of the coalition of legislators working on a Oregon student suicide prevention program. I am on pretty much every child care bill related, since I'm one of 3 legislators who have kids actively in daycare right now. I am working with my colleagues on juvenile justice, changes to the way that we deal with kids who are getting too old for youth custody, but are really dropping them into adult custody for the last year or less of their sentence can be really dangerous. So we're working around some of those things there. I can't read my handwriting, so maybe that one will come to me later. And the last big one I think relevant to our communities is around diesel pollution. Diesel pollution. Cars, truck, well, predominantly for the purposes of this. Spending the rest of our VW settlement funds to get old, dirty diesel engines off the road. The Senate's been unable to get a really substantive bill out of their committee for the last 3 years. So I've been working on it with the Speaker and Representative Rob Noss to make some headway on cleaning up some of the older engines on the road. So that's kind of broad brush where I'm from.
Does that include TriMet? TriMet?
We already included some funding allocation for electric school buses. And
Nice.
TriMet is, because school buses, you can imagine, stop so frequently. You've got young kids standing right next to tailpipe exhaust. So we allocated about $25 million for that already. It should get a lot of phase outs in our school districts around the state. And we have about $55 million left in the VW settlement funds. The incentive is the faster that we can get this back out to business owners to upgrade or phase out their dirty old fleet, the better chance Oregon has of getting more money, because over time the VW settlement funds may include some additional funding, and so states are being incentivized to spend it as fast as they can.
Cool.
Yeah.
So are there new rules for diesel trucks?
We don't
Commercial
have
trucks?
it in this.
Because I'm just a new resident here.
Yeah.
I've really noticed the massive difference between private cars
Mhm.
and commercial trucks, which absolutely stink.
Mhm.
You've got these things belching. I don't know how it's allowed to. So
So-
you're going to be tightening up the actual emissions standards.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're mostly trying to get those old ones off the road, and to get them to buy the newer ones that have the diesel pollution. Or you can retrofit some of the engines and add on technology that will capture diesel emissions, the dirty ones, and clean them up before they go. But sort of broadly, without boring you with the details, Oregon set up a clean diesel fund in 2007 at the state level, and we've never put any money into it. So it's been a huge point of frustration with construction, small delivery companies, and even larger trucking industries. That to date, the legislature has been talking about putting regulations, but we've never put any money to help them make this shift. And especially some of these mid-sized companies, their trucks are what they use as capital assets to borrow and run their business against. And to eliminate these without providing some help to upgrade them can be financially unaffordable. By contrast, California has put in over $1 billion into their fund to help upgrade fleets, and that can be incentives like a 15% incentive if you bear the other 85% of the cost. Washington State, which I feel like is probably a little more economically similar to us, has put in $80 million since they stood up theirs. So we're looking to dedicate the $55 million to help this work get started, and then Representative Rob Noss and I will be convening a task force of the different stakeholders and business owners and different industries and clean air advocates to figure out how we can capitalize this fund in the long term.
Is it true, this was, is it true questions, does Oregon have a coal burning power plant?
We do. Boardman's coming offline though. Yeah. So we passed, the interesting thing about I'll try to keep this brief for those of you who don't follow environmental stuff. I know as an environmental lawyer, my wife is like, "Whoa, I can't hear you." So Oregon passed a bill to phase out coal from our electric utilities.
Right.
Source generation, and we did that before we did cap and trade. And normally if we'd done cap and trade first, under pricing carbon emissions, it would have created a market signal that then would have led to them phasing it out. I think from some people we're getting criticized within the program for basically creating an accommodation carve-out for our electric utilities. But embedded in the rates that we're already paying as PGE or Pacific customers is the amount of money that they're having to invest to shut down that Boardman facility by 2030.
Right.
So they are already on their way to doing that. We're already paying for it. So we're trying to figure out a way so that we don't end up double paying for that work.
Right. Because I thought that it had already been phased out.
No, they're on their way, but they need to. I would love to see us at 100% renewable energy.
Yeah.
The problem with 100% renewable energy is that we all like to turn on our stoves at night to cook when it's dark. And we really don't have battery storage at the scale that we need yet. And the private market, trust me, is like leaping to try to find solutions to store electricity when we are not, when we don't have solar or wind at the same level. So until those technologies come online, we need something else to help in the evening. Natural gas has been thought of as that sort of bridge technology, but we need that to eventually decrease and ideally go away over time as well, so that we're not fossil fuel dependent.
Right.
To get to cleaner energy and a cleaner economy. So it's just accommodating varying different timelines on that we're working through right now. The committee put forward their first bill. If you're following this closely, it's 98 pages. Bless your heart if you've read it already. I'm pretty sure most of my committee members have not. There is an abbreviated outline on the Governor's Carbon Policy Office website, if you want to just kind of look at the top levels of the program. But essentially, just really quickly around the cap and trade work that I'm going to be doing, feel free to call me, email me if you have questions and want to know how it's going. But we're trying to link up with Quebec and California. There are additional states along the East Coast joining the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, which is the East Coast sort of corollary to our West Coast version. They are now just bringing in transportation. We are starting with both transportation and utilities covered and other companies. So we're running sort of at parallel efforts on the different coasts. And what we're trying to do here in Oregon is we don't have California's economy. And we need to keep our businesses that we have that are anchors for both suburban, urban, and rural Oregon. And we're trying to figure out the right way to stand up a program that's going to run through 2050 so we can give ourselves the flexibility to prepare Oregon's economy to transition to where we know we need to go and where we're already starting to go globally. And hopefully attract some great business here, some good talent, and growth companies that we have already that are investing in this work. Yeah.
I've only been on the board here in Brentwood for the last 8 or 9 months. But one of the things that I'm hearing in repeated conversations is an interest in more sidewalks, better transit access, some of the things that when I think about cap and trade statewide, I can see a pretty direct connection between community advocacy for more transportation choices and the 40% of carbon emissions that we currently see coming from the transportation sector. Can you maybe help us see the connection between opportunities to build out better transit, more sidewalks, maybe bike lanes, in the context of cap and trade?
Yeah, absolutely. So Oregon's a little different than California and Quebec. We have a constitutional dedication that revenue is coming from transportation fuels, and I'm just abbreviating this really quickly. Money generated through taxation, any kind of assessment, taxation, others related to fees for transportation fuels has to go to our highway trust fund. And that specifically needs to go for the preservation, maintenance of our highways and roadways. So we have been looking underneath that statute. What can we do under there that would help people to be less reliant on cars if they don't want to be? And help to prepare, I think, our roadways more holistically for the effects of climate change. That's like potholes that erupted all over the place 2 years ago when we had that massive ice storm and then like gutted our tires. But it also includes replacing really old culverts that are blocking, storm drains and causing flooding to back up and are washing out roads in some parts of our coastal state. And so within that, we know we can use that to do more around sidewalks. What we can't use that for is transit. Unless we can create an additional transit lane, but we can't actually fund the transit. So Metro, as they're looking to do a big investment down the road, is talking to us about how we can merge these efforts. And without, really spiking the price on any of us, because that's the thing. We haven't invested in these things for years. Or our city, no offense to the city of Portland, never been elected, has spent the money on other things and has not invested in our community's infrastructure, honestly. So yeah, we're trying, it's a good reminder. We're going to be passing the program, knock on all the wood, because this is like literally my only job. We're going to be passing the program this year. Assume we pass the program this year. It's not going to stand up and start until 2021. And that'll be the first year that we'll be looking at investments and what we can do with them. Now I can tell you, to be very honest, out of everything we're working on this session, I'd say broadly the issue of clean energy is the one that I think is most likely to get referred to the ballot. Issues of transportation, transit were put on the ballot or referred to the ballot in many, many jurisdictions across the country this past November, and the only location where anything related to clean energy won was the City of Portland's Clean Energy Fund. It was crushed again in Washington State. Nevada, it was crushed. There was a local transit effort, I think in Atlanta, and that was crushed. We'll see. I think we're trying to build a program that makes sense for Oregonians, and then hopefully you have confidence at it if other corporations do decide to get together and put it to the ballot like they did with the healthcare tax. So we'll do our best.
Thank you. I was really glad to hear you say sidewalks and transit priority lanes can be built, because I think there's a common misconception that the Highway Trust Fund does limit the ability to be spent on those kinds of things, and it's anything inside of the road right away. So when the City of Portland gets those gas tax dollars, they just call it general transportation revenue and spend it on all kinds of crazy things. So really excited for the potential to chip away at that 40% with some of the
Also just throwing out, because there's been a lot of conversation, at least in Portland, and I know the cap and trade revenue would be statewide, but this discussion around jurisdictional transfer of highways that are essentially dividing communities, and there's a lot of limitations around improvements that can be made on those roadways. I know it's going to require a lot of funding to get those roadways up to par in order to be transferred to local authorities, and so that would be another great idea for what can be done with the money. But I do have a question, actually. You can respond to that, but I was going to ask if you could elaborate on, you mentioned a condoization subcommittee. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I have House Bill 2661, and that's like the only one that's currently sticking in my mind, so fortunately you asked me about that one. It's been an issue that condos are not being built as often as apartment buildings, partially because of the litigation that can happen around condo ownership when there's defects in the building or something like that. So it is a really complex conversation with a lot of people engaged, developers, insurance companies, the lawyers that litigate this stuff. But it's become apparent to me that it's not working. The City of Portland didn't have a single condo construction permit filed in all of 2017. Because the threat of litigation, the actual realities of litigation, how long that can be drawn out, is really chilling. So if the market's hot and you're looking to make a good return on investment in real estate, condo construction's not gonna be working for you as a real estate investment sort of investor. So we are trying to see where's there room to put more time certainty on how long that can draw out, and is there a way that we can incentivize people to come to a resolution of a defect issue without necessarily jumping straight into litigation, which can be just as costly and end up not actually generating enough money in a settlement to fix the actual issue. But what I've heard from some people who represent developers and represent companies that do investments is some construction companies right now won't even go near condo construction because of the litigation risk. And they're much more likely, because the market's so hot, they're much more likely to go jump to something else where they know that they can make a bunch of money and not get put on the hook later if there's a problem. Some are hesitant to participate because the insurance premiums are so high if you engage in this kind of work, because insurance companies are hedging their bets that they're going to get sued and charging more. And altogether, it's just having, we're not the only state experiencing this. Washington State brought a law last year or the year before trying to work through these issues and couldn't come to really great resolution. But Representative Mark Meek, who's a realtor, and we represent sort of the, I don't know, for good or for worse, the gentrifying suburbs of Portland. You know, our communities that are sort of out and up and have infill potential, and it's happening in apartments rather than affordable condo ownership. And all the housing and needs analysis that I was part of when I was a Milwaukee City Councilor indicated that we need affordable points of entry for people to purchase, somewhere between $150,000 and $250,000. That is like big enough to accommodate a reasonably small family. And we just don't, those are not being built right now, so we're trying to figure out why we're talking about them.
That is so awesome to hear. I'm just super excited. A lot of the work I do is around sharing information about what the city's doing, different plan proposals, and there's a lot of discussion around the City of Portland's residential infill project and the opportunities that it may or may not provide for affordable housing. But studies that have done most recently indicate primarily the new units would be rented units, which is great because we have a rental crisis as well. But exactly what you're saying is like we need points of entry for new homeowners to build that equity, build that wealth over time, because we've deprived certain populations of that opportunity for generations. And so I'm really excited to hear that.
I don't know how it's going to go. Anytime you start messing with statute of limitations for how long you can bring an attorney claim, people are like, what are you doing? So it's, you know, people are really, really nice to us right now.
It's nice that it's discussed.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Yeah, absolutely.
The city's currently reviewing residential infill and things like that. How could that play into this? Like, so say you get this bill through and people suddenly decide to build more condos. Is there a way to maybe encourage that kind of affordable housing in areas like ours where we need more infill, but not, we need it to be between the single-family home and the large apartment building level?
Yeah. I don't know what the city would do to particularly incentivize affordable condo home ownership, because I think you'll see both high-end and maybe mid-level. I think it would just attract people who are investing in that sort of midpoint apartment pricing, and where it would naturally, what Rep Meek and I feel like it would naturally happen is where land is not super expensive. I mean, it's pretty expensive in our district, but it's not like downtown Pearl District expensive kind of condos. You know, in an infill lot, if you went up to 3 stories and it would stay within the conformance of general height restrictions for an area, you could probably fit 6 condos on a location, and that's was happening much more frequently in Seattle until they hit this sort of stagnation the way that Oregon did.
I can say that an affordable condo is the reason I'm in this neighborhood. We rented one here, and like the neighborhood so much we bought a house, so it is a nice stepping stone. It's good to see that.
Thanks.
So returning to environmental concerns, not just carbon. I think that you're aware that we have a major polluter within Brentwood Arlington, Precision Cast Parts, known emitter of arsenic, nickel, and hexavalent chromium. And Oregon Health Plan just issued their report last November, minimizing concerns based upon a really limited data set. Still in public comment. It's been extended for 60 more days through March 15th. And not only are they receiving comments from the general public, but they also hired, Oregon Health Authority hired a third-party expert reviewer, a toxicologist. I've been serving on the Citizens Advisory Committee for the last 3 years for the Oregon Health Authority on that environmental assessment. And this expert in our meeting with him, first meeting last week, has been highly critical of the draft report and the assumptions and methodology used. So we don't have his recommendations in writing, but it will be forthcoming before March 15th. And he is suggesting that further study is warranted. And I am wondering, I understand that there's a new body of regulatory authority under Cleaner Air Oregon, and whether you could help us in some way,
That's my
you
job.
know, prioritize re-looking at the emissions from precision cast parts above and beyond the, some would say rather superficial review that Oregon Health Authority has done to date. So just wanted to share that information and ask for your
Yes.
support.
Let me, do you have my contact information already?
Pam's on our board, so we
Okay.
have it, and we can get you the copy of that report
Yeah.
and
The name of the persons I've been requesting.
I believe City Milwaukee might be interested as well.
My second term around, I've realized that because I vote on all their budgets, I get really fast responses from all the agencies. We're in budget season, so right now is a perfectly opportune time for me to find out a lot more information. very quickly.
Great.
Thank you. And Steve Gilbert from the state of Washington is the third-party reviewer whose report will be coming out shortly.
And sometimes our agencies want to do the right thing, but they don't have,
Yes.
I mean, even with citizens showing up in force, they don't have the backs up that they need.
Yes.
Because again, their agency budgets are up for review every 2 years. So I will let them know I'm very interested in it.
Can you say a little bit more, you mentioned about civil rights and that whole realm, so that you could say a little more about your, figures into your work?
Yes, so,
LGBTQ as well.
okay. Measure 11 offenses are what we, well, as a state, we decided to put mandatory minimums into statute years ago. What we know now, particularly around youth brain development, frankly, and the fact that somebody did something terrible when you're 11 or 12, likely can be rehabilitated. We've been looking, I think, in particular, on how can we make sure that kids, frankly, who have made really terrible decisions, maybe done one really bad thing. I mean, our Oregon Youth Authority director comes in and he said, I'd like to remind everybody that we are capturing everybody on their worst day. The worst day that somebody's ever made in their entire life. And we are then have very rigid parameters around how we can rehabilitate them and get them back into society and back to their families if that's appropriate. So we're kind of looking broadly at criminal justice work through that lens this year because the state invests a ton of money. I mean, next to education, Department of Corrections, and healthcare are our biggest budgets. And I want to make sure that we're getting returns on investment for our taxpayer dollars around correctional rehabilitation. I have some other colleagues who are working on some cool civil rights liberties bills. And I haven't had ACLU in to give me their list quite yet. So let me see if I can remember. Oh, yes. I'm part of the Attorney General's task force, you might have heard, around hate crimes, She did a tour around the state and looking at our hate crime legislation and whether it's up to date with best practices. It's not, we haven't updated it in a while, and so the language is outdated, which can preclude people from being held accountable for hate crimes. Some really great defense attorneys will win by interpretation of statutory words. So we're working on looking at protected classes and honestly the rise in incidents of hate crime across the state, what we can do to show up for that in state statute. My personal favorite, and I didn't have anything to do with bringing this bill, but I can't remember which one of my colleagues is bringing a data privacy bill, which I just love from I'm sure everybody's going to have a very strong opinion for and against this. But companies routinely are using our personal data online through cookies and others to track us and make money off of us.
Oh, yeah.
So one of my colleagues, and I can't remember who, because I think I signed on to it as a sponsor, is bringing a bill to require companies to disclose when they're tracking your information and how they're monetizing it.
And he needs to add in a clause where we get a cut of that. Right? No, seriously. Or we should
being able
get a
to opt out.
percentage of how much they make off of our data.
That's great.
Can I ask a follow-up question to Meg's questions on, you were talking about the youth authority. How can, and how education and criminal justice spending are right up there at the top. How can we work some of that spending so that you're doing preventative education that prevents those youth from going there, and also providing opportunities for youth in areas like ours where we don't have any kind of youth activities. The SUN programs are pretty much it in our neighborhood, and the closest accessible Parks and Rec community center with programming isn't actually accessible because of our transit infrastructure. So is there any plans to work preventative education or youth program funding into those bills to not only rehabilitate but prevent them kind of rehab on the front end?
Yes, but not through this bill. So the Joint Committee on Student Success has been touring around the state. They visited 55 different school sites. And my colleagues who were on it said, we expected to see cracking roofs, leaky locations, and just buildings in general, disrepair, given that, we've generally been disinvesting in schools over the last 20 years. They said what we didn't expect to hear was the rampant mental health needs among students and how much housing destabilization affects the way that they're able to connect with their peers. So we know our middle school here has one of the highest rates of turnover in the state. 25% of the kids end up going out and in over any given year. So it's not just about spending more money. It's about putting policies in place so we can make sure that families who are starting at a school know they can afford an apartment, that they're not going to get a giant rent increase after they spend all their money moving in and putting down a down payment. And we also need to invest in mental health services in schools. I spent a day at McLaren Youth Facility, which is the young men's facility down outside Woodburn, with some of the guys who've committed really atrocious crimes. And to a T, all of them had, none of them had a positive male figure in their lives, except for maybe a sports coach. And their parents worked multiple jobs, if they worked, and were rarely there. Or they had parents who were incarcerated. Or frankly, they were living out a legacy of drug addiction in their families and got into it very young. All of them said, if I had access to the level of activities and education as I do in close custody at McLaren, I'd be doing something else with my life right now. They have shop. They can get a barber's certificate there. We invest a lot in youth in close custody to give them the skills so that when they leave, they can get a job in an industry that will take them.
But we're not investing that before they're incarcerated.
Exactly. So fully funding Measure 98 and fully funding our schools is going to be huge, because the increase we're seeing in graduation rates are by and large attributed to the way that we're investing. Not just CTE being the new trendy thing, but for kids who are not learning, or for whom traditional sort of sit down, read a book thing is not working, giving kids opportunities to learn other skills, or some of the great Measure 98 funded programs which are connecting kids out in the community to other people who do work that they're interested in, so they can see a pathway for themselves through graduation, is the sort of educational model that we need to be embracing. So that even if a kid is not having a stable home life, or there are mental health, housing, abuse things, but I'd say we have bottom of the barrel graduation statistics because we have some of the highest cost burden families. We have some of the worst addiction rates in the country, and we have some of the least funded mental health needs in the country. Like, these things are, our test outcomes are an outcome of what we have not funded, frankly. And being super clear, the lovely thing about having a supermajority of Democrats is my Republican colleagues come from, some of them come from areas where their constituents have deep reservations about raising taxes at all. I mean, they've not invested in their own libraries. It's just a different take on where government lies in your life. So when we're looking at things like investing in schools, we can do that without trying to, we can do that as a supermajority vote as Democrats. And if our Republican colleagues join us, awesome. And then if they feel like they can't for their constituents right now or not ever, then we can still do the investments. Yeah.
Case in point, the joinery
Mm-hmm.
has a close working relationship with Franklin High School Woodshop,
Mm-hmm.
which just has a fabulous brand new woodshop. The professionals come in, work with the teachers, and the brightest have a guaranteed job at the joinery, either after school or after they graduate, which is a heck of an amazing company.
Yeah, that's
Also, a child who's in a music program, band, choir, so forth, orchestra, most of them go on to become musicians, if not amateur. It affects the brain and how you learn, how you interact with people. Funding music programs will cut your trouble in half.
Programs that we used to have in schools have been taken away, and
A bored child's a destructive child.
like very few of the schools have shop classes in middle school. So the first time kids are being introduced to these programs now is when they get to high school. And I'm dating myself, but when I went to middle school, there was a shop class, there was home ec, there was band, there was choir, there was the opportunity to take dance. And now there's not. There's barely enough funding for there to be math, foreign language, science, English, and the other programs that are needed for the students that come here and don't even speak English. Lane is lucky enough to have an amazing band teacher and an art teacher, but the kids have to pick. They only get one elective a year, and then they have all these other classes. Classes have been lengthened, but the kids aren't really learning any more than what we did 20, 30 years ago. We're actually learning less now because the options have been taken away from our children. So,
Bring back civics.
Kind of coming back to the civil rights and education piece of it, is there plans or funding or bills on the table to increase the ability for Indigenous, Black, and other minorities to get education training and become teachers and lower the barriers so that we can get more representational educators in school?
Yes, that is part of the recommendations coming out of the Joint Committee on Student Success, and they have them available online too if you want to go poking around for them. A number of students in majority non-white communities said I went through my entire educational career without seeing a single teacher that looked like me. And you have to be able to see what opportunities lie for you, and so that's culturally competent teachers can come from all backgrounds. But there's always something about meeting somebody who's had a background like you and has gone through maybe similar family circumstances or a similar personal life trajectory that can resonate with a kid differently. So having a full range of life experiences is really valuable to have in a school setting. And we're having a hard time retaining minority teachers because frankly they don't enjoy being the only one in an entire school.
We've heard that from local teachers, that they are basically the token person in that school, and it's very difficult.
Well, it's just not reflective of our overall population.
No.
So that just creates not a very enjoyable work environment. I want to note that like part of this, I think the national conversation is that Democrats just tax and spend. Republicans are
Spend a tax.
well.
Sorry.
Part of this mix, and I want to touch on what Senator Taylor's working on, is our senator's chair of our workforce committee, which is hearing all of the PERS bills and all of the background on cost containment. And if you haven't met Senator Taylor before, she and I are going to do a joint town hall later this spring together. It's on my constituent coffee email list, so you'll see it. She's even busier than I am because she's on like 5 substantive committees and has 2 kids in high school, both of whom are active in sports and schools, so I don't know how she sleeps ever. But she is a government auditor as a background, and she's been continually looking for ways to bring more cost transparency to the way that we run government, and make sure that we are spending smarter, not just spending more, and if we are spending more, that we're spending smarter with that additional dollars. So she has a whole host of bills that she's asked me to introduce on her behalf that relate to different aspects of PERS or the kicker. The kicker are the ones that kind of made it in the newspaper that we're trying to take everybody's kicker away. Not true. We're trying to figure out the educational mix of investments along with cost containment. I don't know exactly what she's strategizing with the senators on, because I think it'll be part of the really complex web of how do we do big educational investments while still reassuring voters that we're doing what we can to contain the cost of government as prices for things increase. So if you don't hear back from her, do not take it personally. Sometimes I have to go walk over to see her staff. She takes 5-minute meetings, she's so swamped. But that whole puzzle is starting to come together with good ideas. Keep in mind, we're not done in the legislature until June 30th. So in 2017, my experience was that those pieces that made the most sense and linked together economically, we need to run a cost model on them to make sure that they make our economy, or our benefit for our economy. Our state economists can do that, kind of high level, very detailed modeling. That kind of stuff will probably start to come together in April, would be my guess timing-wise. And once we have a revenue reform proposal that's really dialed, I'd imagine we'll be taking it to town halls around our communities the way that we did last time. So I did 3 last time, and then I think I came by and presented at least 3 neighborhood associations, so that you all had a good idea about where these investments, what was changing, and so you weren't just reading what the newspaper was reporting on, but could see and answer questions, also give us your perspective on where we're going. So I'll play time for that.
All right, we have time for one more question.
Question is a statement regarding the kicker. Like, I would be welcome to let it go and then not have to pass bonds to fund schools every few years, just as a personal Oregonian. Just my message.
Me too.
Stephanie, do you have a question?
Well, I wanted to, I have a comment.
Yes.
I attended Carmen Power's constituent coffee in January, and I was curious, I asked you, how do constituents support an elected representative who's doing work that they like? How do we help an elected official be successful? And I was very interested in your response. One, their staffing is limited, and they don't have always time to do as much research as they would like to do that to underlie the bills that they're working on. And so referring articles to them, or like to report this information on precision cast parts, sending articles that have to do with the work that she's working on can be very, very helpful. And then as you get towards the end of the session, to weigh in on what you think the priorities are. That means going to the representative's website and reviewing what they're working on and say, okay, well, this is more important to me than that, and letting you know. I really, really care about the education thing as opposed to, or the LGBT thing as opposed to the carbon thing, whatever. So those were, did I capture that correctly? Yeah, so I thought that was very interesting. So there are two ways we can help our representative carry out her wonderful work.
And it's not too late, so I have 3 constituent bills specific to circumstances people have run into. So if you have a particular bee in your bonnet about something, let us know sooner rather than later. I'm bringing a bill. I have a constituent who kept on getting pulled over by an overzealous police officer while doing his newspaper route, because the way that our hands-free device law reads, there's enough wiggle room that it wasn't super clear that he shouldn't be ticketed for looking at his route while he's delivering newspapers, which is a carve out in the state statute. So we're clarifying that. I have another one for a constituent of mine who was handing out information on how to vote to her mobile home park neighbors, and was told that there's policies against doing that within the mobile home park, which is a First Amendment issue, but we're clarifying in state statute that you're allowed to do that, just to cover bases going forward. And then I have a great group of constituents who would love to be able to ride their motorcycles through traffic when traffic's at a dead stop. So we have a bill to enable them to do so when traffic is traveling less than 5 miles an hour. I don't know how all these are going to go, but they're important to you. So if you have things that are really important to you and you've seen other states who have heard about it, let us know. If you want to sit on that until like July, feel free, because I can't introduce any more bills right now anyway. But that's my job, is to make sure that I'm elevating the issues that you want me to do, like this, writing a letter on behalf of your neighborhood association. I'll add that too. If there are things that you would like to see funded from the state in your location as a neighborhood, it doesn't stop any of my colleagues from asking for money from the state general fund. And this is the year that we work on all of our budget stuff. So I don't really have any financial asks in for our district yet. So I wanted to put that out too.
So we can ask for music and sports.
Okay.
No, it has to be like a particular project, usually general fund, so like some kind of construction, some kind of investment. Like we do like, one of my colleagues got an investment for their community center, for example.
So say we wanted to do a youth program at the middle school after hours, would that be a type of financial investment in the funding for that, but maybe wrapping in some of this preventative education and things like that?
Possibly, more like...
Or does it need to be more of like an asset or an infrastructure?
Usually bonding or general fund dollars. Generally just something durable in construction, because expanding a policy or a program. But I don't know, let me know. If there's something that you as a neighborhood really feel strongly about, and it's something we can fit into another agency's budget, or something that they already do, that's part of my job too.
Could you maybe send us either, or point us to samples of what could be under that rubric, because I'm not really clear on it right now.
This is the Christmas tree bill?
Yep.
Okay.
It's-
There's your fine.
Okay, fine.
You know,
Yeah.
just read them.
I
the ones
will
that
work
figure it out.
with Rep. Powers' assistants to get information on this and do a post on our website.
Oh, good.
And Garrett can also help with pull some of that information
Yeah.
together.
For example, the city of Milwaukee's library was $800,000 short in construction because of the rising cost of construction. So I got $300,000 in general fund bonding to help them bridge that gap. Didn't solve the entire problem, but got them significantly further, and they're breaking ground on the new library.
Nice.
So my colleagues are great about bringing home dollars for sidewalk and road infrastructure. Our East Oregon colleagues are just kill it, so I'm trying to compete better with Janelle Bynum, since she's on a mission to get sidewalks along Foster Powell.
And she's-
And she's way outpacing. Maybe the need is really great out there too. But it
We'll
just,
be talking to you soon then.
it reminded me about this too, because you guys are hugely underserved.
And what's the deadline on these proposals for funding?
Sooner we can start, so I can start being like, hey, Dan Rayfield, who is my colleague, who's our budget co-chair, whose office is right next to mine. He's already getting needled with people. I mean, people have had funding asks from previous years going through, but it is good to start talking about the ways that I can either help the city of Portland do better by your district by showing up, for example, at a city council budget meeting, which I'd be happy to do. But it occurred to me too at my constituent coffees. I don't talk very often about the ways that we can help bring home dollars for our district, since there's dollars generally available for this kind of work.
Awesome.
Yeah.
We'll work on some proposals.
Okay.
All right, we're going to go ahead and take a 5-minute break. Thank you very much.
Would you have me that
I noticed.
All right, we're going to come back together. We're running just a few minutes behind, but it was totally worth it. And we're going to kick things off with Paul and a Southeast Uplift update. Are you ready for us?
Yeah, I really don't
Come
have any.
stand up here. Come on. Come on. You got it. If you're going to be a rep, you got to be up here.
Hi, friends.
Hi.
So, I really don't have much to report because our meeting was on Monday and they canceled it because Portland Public Schools wasn't open because there was like dandruff or something in the sky. In fact, I showed up to the meeting to have it like a minute late and then I read the notice and it was canceled. So I really don't have much information. And the one update I had was about the Office of Neighborhood Involvement, now the OCCL, LCC. Looking for, I do that every time.
Civic life is what they want us to call it.
Is seeking public input. So what Leah's statement was about the meeting on Tuesday of next week is the one thing I had because it was the one thing in my email that was at all interesting. I'm looking for some more information. About Manju, did you have anything cool?
I have some. If you give me a minute, pull up the cool email from Southeast Uplift. They are having a class on meeting facilitation in March.
Really?
Or its Office of Civic and Community Life is doing it, I believe.
Oh, okay.
Board members, you may see it in your email when you get done with this meeting. But that is a free class being offered at Civic Life. And if my email ever loads, I can tell you more about it, but it is in March. And it's a 2-day class, so be aware of that. But they're offering it free. And it's all about facilitating meetings and being more inclusive and directing conversations. So like if you want a conversation about something specific, how to navigate that. So I will, it's called Facilitation Training. Learn to lead reflective conversations.
I missed that.
It was a recent post. So, and that is March 7th, 8:30 to 4, or 8:30 to 5, and March 8th, 8:30 to 4. So I can put that up online if people are interested in that. Board members, it should be in your email.
A quick announcement.
What's up?
March 30th, Mount Star Leather is presenting the Community Alliance of Tenants doing a renters' rights training. It's Saturday from 1:30 to 3:30 at the Mount Scott Community Center. Thus far, we've asked Preston Kellenworth and Foster Powell to co-sponsor. The Department of Darlington perhaps want to promote the event too, that'd be very welcome.
Please send us any information.
Yeah, sure.
And it's coinciding with the Irving Williams Food Pantry drop, so there's going to be lots of free food, translation services, childcare is ADA accessible.
Is PTU involved in that?
Not this. This is kind of like a limited, very focused capacity.
Okay.
But you do want to invite them to a future larger forum for the county and commissioners.
And Matthew, could you repeat what it is again?
Yeah, it's the Community Alliance of Tenants. They're a nonprofit, statewide nonprofit. They are presenting a renters' rights training. So I know a lot of neighborhood associations are looking at how you engage highly mobile populations like renters as opposed to homeowners. And we're trying to look out that pathway through this process. Yeah.
That was all I had though, because.
Thank you much. Thank you. All right,
Should I just do the grant thing real quick?
yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's under Southeast.
Tomorrow, I'm finally turning in the grant that I've been writing in Southeast Uplift. Well, we'll see. But basically, I wrote a grant on behalf of the Brentwood Arlington Neighborhood Association requesting funds to create and print and then distribute a neighborhood resource guide that would be in multiple languages so that we're bringing in neighbors of different cultures. And we'll see how it goes, so I'm excited. And that's sort of a stepping stone to this larger project that we are intending to do, which is a neighborhood survey canvassing effort. So this would be something like a physical thing that we can take to people to make sure that they're getting the resources they need at turning. Yeah.
Will it be like the directory?
Kind of, yeah. So I pulled from a couple other, mostly cities that have these, that have developed these, that are, you know, it would be everything from who are your elected officials to what businesses are in your neighborhood, childcare, school programs, transportation, so forth.
Maps of parks, religious
I bet ours is about 15
organizations.
years old by now.
Yeah.
So Gail, do you have a version of that running around anywhere?
Probably in my files.
If you find one, we'd love to see it.
Yeah, cool.
So, thank you.
for spending all
Yay!
the
All right, we have our treasurer report. Let me get over to that screen and there you go. Take it away, Lynn.
All right, welcome, everybody. So not much in January. We had some donations from the tree recycling event that the Boy Scouts helped out with. So we
It was
made
so cute.
$45 from that. And then there was a $20 donation from Rob Hannafin towards the Hazeltine Park Stone. So that's for that. Rob. So that's it. The other thing that we need to do today, though, is approve our communications budget, communications fund budget, so I can turn it into Southeast Uplift. So we have $1,431 again this year, and I was going to propose something similar to last year. We did $1,000 for event advertising and community outreach, $342 for swag and general communications, and then $89 for the mailbox rental.
Sounds good.
Yeah, so I need to do a motion?
You propose a motion.
Question,
Yeah.
Discussion?
last year's $1,000, did we use all of that?
We used everything. We used the $1,431. Yes,
And 97 cents. We used it all.
we used it all. We got reimbursed.
No, I just wanted to make sure that
Oh, okay.
we used all the money, because I know we were stressed about, did we use it all? Did we get those postage stamps?
Yeah.
We did. Yep.
And actually, okay, so I'm going to put a motion on the board to approve the communication funds budget. 1,000 for advertising and community outreach, 342 for general communications and swag, and then the $89 mailbox rental.
Discussion.
Yeah.
How important is our mailbox rental? Do we check it often enough? Can mail come here?
I would love to have a discussion about the mailbox since nobody's checked it since Rob moved.
Uh-oh.
I check it if
So-
I'm expecting
Okay. So I have, Rob gave me his key before he moved, so if somebody would like to check that. I would love to slowly move our mail over to coming here. There is no reason it can't come here. We have a mailbox here. They already give us mail here. So, if we send it to Southeast Uplift, they have to get it to us somehow, and I'm not driving down there all the time. Still.
We have a mailbox.
But having it come directly here takes out all the problems.
That's true.
And people send things here by mistake all the time anyway.
Right.
So,
Middle school.
how long is our mailbox good for now?
So the only thing is we paid it in December.
Okay.
So if we want to get reimbursed from Southeast Uplift, we should approve it now or this year so we can,
So what we could do is, go ahead, Derek.
Brochures, do we have the PO box in the brochure?
We do. So what we can do is we can slowly phase out the PO box, and then at the end of the, in December, instead of renewing it, we can do address forwarding. And in the meantime, we'll move everything over, all of our letterhead and all of that, as we reprint things to this address.
I recommend or request that when we reprint brochures, that we put a change of address in proactively.
Agreed. So when we go to print brochures, we will do change of address. Okay, is there any more discussion on this motion? Do I have a,
So,
what?
We still need to get the mail.
yeah, for a while.
Yeah.
But, okay, so we're gonna have an extra $89.
Not this year,
Not this year.
next year.
year.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
so next year we can allot it differently.
Coming December of 2019 though, we're not going to have to pay
We won't.
mailbox fee if
Correct.
that's what we're discussing right now.
Yes.
So that $89
We won't spend. We
we
won't.
won't spend, but we have to spend so that they'll reimburse us that entire lump sum, correct?
Well, we've already paid
We
it for this
already paid
year,
it,
so
yeah.
this year's communication funds that we're voting on right now will reimburse it that we've already paid, and then we will not be using it in the next budget cycle.
So the communications funds, it
Is
runs
it
from.
in advance like the phone bill?
So let
I
me,
mean, is that what I'm trying to figure
let me
out?
explain. The communications fund goes from October 1st of 2018 all the way to September 30th of 2019. So I paid that in December of 2018. So when we get that approved, we're basically voting for this so that I can submit it to Southeast Uplift, they approve it, and then they can start issuing checks.
Right.
So we were already in the period, we're like, 3-4 months into our communication funds.
Our fiscal
Allowance.
year.
Right. So
Okay.
if we don't approve the $89, I won't be able to submit that money, so we'll just lose it.
Yeah.
So
We
that's
don't
why.
wanna lose it.
No, we
I-
don't.
that's
So
what I
that's
was
why it's on here.
Wanting clarification
Yes.
because
Yeah.
I'm thinking yearly,
Right,
not
no,
fiscal.
right.
No.
Fiscal explains a lot.
Yeah.
When you
Yes.
say, okay, it's from this date to this date, I understand fiscal.
Yep.
I
And I also
under a
wanted to
rock, but not all the
propose,
time.
just to kind of put it out there, for us to spend, to be sure that we used up our communications fund by like the end of August, rather than the end of September, so we're not scrambling around,
Right.
trying to,
Coffee cups
buy
for
stamps,
everybody.
Yeah, so then we can like wrap that up by August, I can submit it, we can
Yeah.
get our money, get that before September 30th.
Great.
So,
Okay,
yes.
so we have a motion on the table to approve the communications funds budget as stated, with
Second.
funds to be spent by September 1st,
August 31st.
or August 31st,
Yeah,
sorry.
Stephanie, was yours?
I was gonna second it.
Well, I didn't hear it, so who's gonna second it?
I did, yeah.
Okay, Gail seconds, do we have any further discussion? Okay, all in favor of passing the motion? Well, all opposed, all abstaining, motion passes 12-0.
Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you, Lynn.
Excellent.
Did you
All
pass
right.
this to Chelsea? It's a Christmas tree article.
Oh. This is a picture from our Christmas tree fundraiser that brought in $45.
I donated $20.
No, so remember, we only got half of the funds. We actually did better this year. We recycled,
Okay, so you got.
we recycled 4 more trees. We actually made more money, but we split it with the Boy Scouts
Which is
because they came out and volunteered for this event. And it was really great for them because they got to practice going to speaking to people coming in. So they would go up and ask them for a donation and ask them to sign up for the newsletter.
So much fun.
So, we're gonna advertise better next year. We're really trying to get this into more of an event. I think we need to play with the hours a little bit. And
It was a really short window.
Yeah.
It was frustrating, and it was only on a Saturday, I think.
well, we're working around a donation of time, so maybe we could get additional arborists to maybe partner on this and have it be more of a community project.
Like you
So,
probably did.
But, All right, let's see, what's next on our agenda? Land use and transportation, Stephanie, what do you have for us?
Secretary.
Oh, sorry, secretary, it's still you.
Okay, so first, let's talk about the January minutes. I sent them out a couple of weeks ago. I got some corrections back, which I've made, and then Pam gave me some more tonight. I'm going to eliminate an entire sentence saying that the park, Arrow Heights Park Citizen Advisory Committee recommended a design to the, and they didn't really, so I don't know where I
We
got
just
that.
gave them feedback, but it
Right.
doesn't go to the parks director, it goes to the project manager.
Right, so I had that all messed up, so I'm going to eliminate this sentence. And otherwise, there weren't any other corrections, so unless I hear more right now.
No, it's not good.
Okay, then I propose that we approve the minutes of January 2019 as amended.
Okay,
As I build them in when I get home.
we have a proposal on the table to approve the minutes as to be amended. Do we have a second?
I said.
Oh,
Okay, yes.
all right, Esther was louder.
Oh.
Seconded by Esther, all in favor of approving the minutes? All opposed? All abstaining? Motion passes 12-0. Thank you much for our excellent secretary.
I have another part to my
Okay.
secretary part. I volunteered to look at the work plan and see where we stand on it, and then I didn't do that for a while, so I'm going to catch us up here. On our attempts to help residents engage with one another, we did post Meal Train on Nextdoor, and it's now posted at the BDNA website.
And it also went out in the e-newsletter.
Oh, as well, okay, and also the newsletter. And then Shannon is working on a survey, and so that's in the resource guide, so that is very much part of our outreach. And then at a recent meeting of our loosely assembled Strategic Action Committee, we talked about a variety of things. And for me, I don't want this to generate work. This is supposed to be our just talk and think about things committee. But there was a very interesting suggestion raised that it might be possible to set up a mechanism that will allow us to help residents respond to something very quickly. And the case in point was there was a car chase, a police chase that ended with a car crashing through the fence up at Woodmere School. And it happened at
Woodmere too.
It took out a fence at Woodmere. There was a Clackamas police chase that ended up out there, and then they had to chase the person through backyards and things like that.
And I guess he ended up near Tina. But in any case, it happened at night, and the kids were coming to school in the morning and seeing this kind of traumatic thing with the car and the fence, and so the suggestion was raised that if we could mobilize people in the area, quickly they could have come and greeted students and put up nice signs on what remained of the fence, just to have a counter influence to this disturbing sight that kids would encounter when they were coming to school.
Big sign that says, "Don't drink and drive."
That was a police chase.
Another example would be the hate crime that happened with Trudy this summer with the gentleman. The idea is that we could mobilize quickly to support our neighbors.
Right.
And that ties in directly with the topic of Portland Unite Against Hate, which we'll be also talking about, so there's a thread across this.
Well, so as we go forward, maybe we can talk about a way of reaching out to certain parts of our neighborhood when something happens, so we can help people gather and support one another.
That could also be tied into our neighborhood emergency response planning that we'd like to do.
Right.
Well, because if you already have a mechanism set up for this, then you can work that into it.
Oh, yeah, no,
You have these contacts.
Well, I think that's fine. It was that we plan to do part.
Yes,
Yes, laughing at, because we're already behind in our work plan. We were supposed to have been working on the bylaws. That's my responsibility. I haven't done it yet.
It's okay, you're doing a lot.
Yeah, well, I have, it's true. And then December was a hard month for me. I had to kind of check out of everything. But I will get onto the bylaws.
They'll be
And
there.
then Pardon?
We have to donate.
No, I know, but I want to put it behind me so I don't have it on my list. I hate that. When I see it there.
It no longer
week
sparks
after
joy
week,
for
month
me.
after month, yeah. And then we want to finalize the budget that Chelsea has been working on.
Yep.
And we've talked about fundraising, but then we don't ever get together and come up with ideas and a plan. And Pam has rightly suggested that we should have a grant proposal application strategy so that we know what's out there and is something useful, can we apply for it, and when, we need to know when the deadlines are and who's going to do it and so on. And then we still haven't put together our mission or vision, although since we have our action streams, that would not be a real difficult thing to do. But I was wondering if maybe we could have a special work session, just a one-off, where we could work on ideas for fundraising, chop out a mission, vision statement, approve a budget for the year. We never had a budget, and but we don't have enough time in our board meetings to do this. So, are people amenable to getting together for a couple of hours and just working on this stuff? Okay, great.
Can I just, maybe ask for a show of hands of people who think they might be interested, just so I can get a sense of whether I need to,
Okay.
who might,
We could use one of our Tuesdays for this as well. The
Okay.
Boy Scouts only use the building for 1 hour.
Okay.
So we could work it around there where we could be on the flip side of that or use the fireplace room.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, well, all right, and we could set up a meeting and make it very organized with people's while.
Awesome.
Great.
Okay, we'll float in an email and get that all scheduled out.
Okay.
Great.
All right, so that's all for secretary.
All right, put on your
Now we
land
can go
use
on
and
to
transportation plan.
Land use and transportation. We have an order of business. Patrick Burke has been the chair of the land use committee, and I've been kind of a co-chair. But he is so swamped with work, he can never hold meetings, and we haven't held any meetings. And so we finally worked out something where I said I would step up and attempt to be the chair and he'll remain as a consultant to us because he knows so much about land use. And so I officially need to be approved by you all to do this.
I approve.
Right?
Well, you're already the co-chair.
So
I'll feel better.
it's
if
an
you
easy
say-
motion that
That's
someone
okay with
needs
you.
to make to approve the transition of Stephanie from co-chair to full chair. So
I
Meg,
move it, Leslie.
do we have we have a motion on the table to move Stephanie to full chair of the Land Use and Transportation Committee, seconded by Garrick. All in favor? All opposed? All abstaining? Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you,
Stephanie.
Thank you.
You vote of confidence, we'll see how this plays out. So I have two other things for land use, and if you want to put up our slide, our
You
same
bet.
slide. Okay, so we being several of us, Matthew, Terry Dubinsky, Milton, and Leah Fisher from Southeast Uplift, Matthew from North Carolina, Chelsea and I were working on pulling together a coalition of 7 neighborhoods, of organizations, and individuals to work on transportation matters here. And Chelsea has jumped in and created a logo for SEAM. SEAM means Southeastern Active Motion. It's also like SEAM is seamless. The idea is
It's kinda
to
cute.
have this
I
is
can't take
natural-
any
this
credit
is
for
natural
the-
invention. I
yeah.
think it's wonderful to have SEAM.
It was Marcia right here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
My responsibility.
Yes.
If I like it, he did it. If you don't.
Jessie has great marketing skills, and she set up a website, email, some sample business cards, a logo, and so we're ready to go and start reaching out to neighborhoods here and ask them if they'll, agree to join advocacy for their own benefit and for the mutual benefit of the scene area. Tonight, Representative Karen Howard gave us a signed letter. It's to planners in PBOT, planners that Chelsea and I met with, endorsing our request that our area be included in the next round of 2 programs that PBOT sponsors. And so she's written a very strong letter in favor, and also said that she will be glad to come and attend budget meetings at the city on our behalf. And so I was very,
That's great.
I know, I was very excited.
They actually did during the grant, when we were applying for the Regional Flexible Funds grant. At the time, Senator Kathleen Taylor was a representative, and she did that where she came to Metro and testified on our behalf. So, yes, definitely. And it does make a difference in our strength, the strength of our case.
And she was referencing Janelle Bynum's, Representative Bynum's effort to get $150 million for the jurisdictional transfer of Outer Powell. And so one of the ideas that immediately jumped to my mind is how we would fund jurisdictional transfer for Valley City setback in some other measure, similar size. That's much bigger than the Christmas tree bill normally,
Or at least make some strides towards that.
You can use the PAL as kind of
On
a
that topic, if
example.
you haven't been tracking, there is an 82nd Avenue Coalition that has been working for 7+ years. And so there's a lot of momentum around that right now.
Yeah, we just had a visit from Marty Stockton with the 82nd Avenue barriers to improvement and barriers to what? Development, that's right. And that was one of the things they touched on, and that was at our last meeting, and those, that information and slides is up on our website. If you missed it. Anything else, Stephanie?
Yes, just a few more words on SEAM. In addition to trying to get our area fixed in these programs, one is called In Motion, which I think I've told you in the past, kind of focuses on pedestrian bicycle safety. But then you have to improve intersections, and you get a whole lot more going for you than, say, just a few bicycle lanes. And the other is called Fixing Our Streets. It's based on gasoline tax, which is expiring at the end of this year, right? 2020. So it needs to be renewed. And so we don't know yet whether it's going to be renewed, but the planners in PBOT have told us that our area is a good candidate for that kind of funding. Some of that funding goes to Safe Routes for School, and I noticed that there are a couple of things on there that are going to benefit us. An intersection on 52nd where the Greenway is going to be, for example. So anyway, we are trying to get our SEAM area entered into both of those programs, but Fixing Our Streets is provisional on the gas tax being renewed. But then also in recent discussions, and I thank Garrick for this, we also can engage in advocacy for individual capital projects. And for example, the intersection at Duke and 72nd has got a lot of problems these days, and that could conceivably be something that we locally focused on and called attention to PBOT and so on. Gary also had the idea of engaging local residents in advocacy without it being burdensome. You call on them once to come and have a photo up at the intersection, and so that's easy for people to do. And then we send that photo on, and it has influence.
Love it.
But it doesn't take away from people's valuable time.
And we've had success with that in the past. There was a similar photo taken for the Regional Flexible Funds of people at Cooper Lake.
Oh, right, that's
So,
right. Exactly, okay, so we can work on that. So we're developing an advocacy plan, and our elevators come to the
There it is.
so.
Splish splash, sorry.
That's quite all right. Okay, all right, and then
One other thing we might be able to do, I noticed they're doing an intersection improvement at 72nd and Crystal Springs. They're actually installing it. So one thing that might be fun is taking a photo while they're doing the project and like saying thank you.
Oh, yeah.
especially if we're gonna do it a couple more times and say, hey, do stuff, we should also say, hey, thank you.
That's a great idea, okay. But that's not part of this missing safe routes to school funding.
It is, it's the same route. Yeah.
So there's money for the intersection, but not for the sidewalk.
Right.
Is that what, oh, I see, okay.
72nd Crystal Springs.
72nd Crystal Springs is currently under construction. It looks like they're building the intersection.
Oh, okay, so maybe we can, okay, let me put a star by that, and we can get back to
Maybe we
that.
can follow up on that at committee's meeting or before.
Okay.
So. All right,
And
anything else?
speaking of safe routes to school, Chelsea and I yesterday went to city council
Thank you.
and
Yes.
testified. And the planner who's been put in charge of building our Duke and Flavel sidewalk infills and the greenways,
Rich Newland.
Rich Newland, thank you, asked us to come because he said that the city council will be much happier at accepting the money from the federal money that's coming to us from Metro via ODOT, which I don't understand. They'll be happier if there's some local support for this and it's not just the staff pulling something sneaky on the council and pretending that the locals want it. Apparently there's been some problems in the past, I don't know.
Or it gives the impression of it if it's only the city departments asking for these kinds of things.
Right.
So
That-
it's asking for years.
So,
I would love to have
Thank you
a
for going to
sidewalk.
council.
But-
Thank you for going.
but our
Yes.
presence allowed them to do something that,
Yeah.
that they otherwise couldn't have, as they were able to pass an emergency clause. And we're not exactly sure what that means, but it means the funding gets there faster somehow.
Oh,
So
And-
there's
and-
some technicality they do that moves it along
But
faster.
yeah, the Commissioner Nick Fish said because we have people who have come here from the neighborhood in support of this, I move that we attach this emergency clause.
Oh, that's
So-
Powerful, okay.
So it ended up being worthwhile, our coming.
So it was worth it to show up.
Was that the 2.2 million?
That is, it's over 5 million
It's-
because it's the 2.2 and then it's matched with PBOT funds as well.
It is the 2.
So,
so when do we get them?
the funds will start moving and then they can begin the design process, but there's a question around like their capacity right now.
They're supposed to start the design later this year
Okay.
and start construction next year.
Oh, I thought we were
Design
gonna start this
a sidewalk?
Well, you have to have a certain specification. Where they're doing infill, they have to match the infill to the existing and measure how high
There
it
is no
is and
existing.
figure out how much.
There are
money-
patches of existing and there has to be, ADA
Yeah,
and
I've always.
all of that.
That's
I've always
stormwater.
questioned
Yeah, the
why
other one was
I have
water.
the framework for a sidewalk in front of my house, but it's filled with dirt.
Yep. So that's what's gonna be filled with cement or concrete or whatever it is, so we can't control the process, but we're moving
And we don't know
along.
exactly what the emergency clause means, but it could potentially speed this process.
That's what it seemed to mean. Pam,
So
do
I
you have
believe
insight on
city
that?
ordinances normally take effect 30 days after the vote unless there's an emergency clause. So whatever the wording was in the ordinance, it now takes immediate effect after the vote.
Great. So they can move over immediately rather than waiting 30 days.
Thank you. It's a design. All
Today
I
we
want is
learned.
flat.
All right. We are running a little behind. Do we have anything else, Stephanie?
No, that's it.
Okay. Do we have a quick update on equity and inclusion?
Yes, we are still working on scheduling the Won't You Be My Neighbor, how relationships affect the place we live in March or April through moves at Southeast Uplift, but it's gonna be really good.
And what is it again? You
Oh,
don't need to speak so fast.
Won't You Be My Neighbor?
Won't you be my neighbor?
Won't you be my
Mr.
neighbor?
Rogers, okay.
Yeah, and we chose that as the most, we collectively here chose that as the most compatible one for starting.
And what is it?
It's through the Oregon Humanities Conversation Project. I'll give you the wording.
Okay. It's another community conversations
Right.
project.
So that's a cool thing. And also, I have these nice bright orange, and I'll put it on the website too, about Portland United Against Hate. And I'm going to propose
and we don't have to vote on it tonight, but you can see on the back, there are a bunch of neighborhood associations who have endorsed the work of Portland United Against Hate, and I'm thinking that Brett Darlington might very well, pardon? Well, it's not on the list. Did we do that? I don't know that.
Let's look into it and see if we voted on that previously and if it maybe just didn't make it in. And if we haven't, we can bring it up for discussion and vote next meeting.
That's fine.
So, Patrick, or Paul, can you look into that, please?
I seem to remember we did that
The minutes are up on our website if you want to dig through them and find it.
yeah.
Thank you. Anything else? Meg?
Oh, yeah, the schools. That's the next topic.
Yep.
So it appears that at this moment, the heat issue and the radon issues at Lane are being handled reasonably appropriately at this moment. So I did not write the letter because circumstances change, but I will have it on my computer ready to write as needed.
Excellent.
So,
And so this is the school district has stepped up to send repair people and so on.
yes, partly.
They're working on it, they're at least moving forward.
There's some movement on it.
So is there a plan that
It
we
is
need
addressed.
high levels of radon gas?
Yes,
Okay, so they're
yes.
getting bids or?
Oh, yeah, there's a contractor, it's just that the way they do it is it takes longer than we wish it would, and, yeah.
And then they
so-
had an issue with testing and had to retest at
Right.
least once, so.
Right. But I'm explaining why I didn't write the letter, because it's currently being reviewed.
Yeah, so
I'll
we're
let you
tracking
know.
it.
I'll let you know.
All right, parks update?
And we're running behind.
That's all right.
So last year, 2018, was a very good year for parks in Brentwood, Arlington. As many of you know, we not only had the December 1st ribbon cutting on the redevelopment of Hazeltine Park as the second nature patch in the city, but also we made significant progress on a major park, the Earl Heights Park at 45th and Harney Drive, and both of these activities were when Commissioner Amanda Fritz was in charge of Parks and Rec. And so I'm proposing that in the spirit of Valentine's Day, we send Commissioner Fritz a Valentine saying, you know, thank you for supporting Parks in Brentwood, Darlington, and you're in our hearts, basically.
Yes.
Sure. So I think that, you know, we need to be known as not only proactive watchdogs, but also a neighborhood association that shows its gratitude for its friends and supporters. So,
Agreed. Yeah.
Can we all sign it right
yeah,
now?
that's what I'm suggesting. So, you know, she's of British heritage, so in the lighthearted vein, this is called You're the Cat's Pajamas. So hopefully she will appreciate
And then
that.
she go around with it.
Yeah, right.
Excellent. Anything else for parks?
Well, I just want to say that we had our last design meeting as a Community Advisory Council on January 9th, and the design schematic and the minutes of that meeting are up on the BDNA website. We had some success in keeping the community garden in its existing location and closing to 904. And it's a balance between nature and active recreation with trails, interpretive signs, picnic areas, an orchard, and a pollinator garden, a skate spot, a basketball court, and fencing along Harney Drive, probably. And barbecues. And 2 focus groups will be convened in the March-April timeframe, one on interpretation and one on play structures. Many of you may have seen the recent media announcements about a $6.3 million Parks and Rec budget deficit. So I called the project manager this morning just to make sure that our $12.7 million for Earl Heights Park was not in jeopardy. He said, no, it's not, because it comes from system development charges, not from the general fund. And then he said, and by the way, I'm making a presentation next week for an additional $84,000 of funding for public art through the Regional Arts and Cultural Program. So we get yet more money.
Nice.
So yay.
Yay.
Yeah, all right, that's it.
Thank you.
Regional Arts and what?
Regional Arts and Cultural Council,
All right.
RACC program.
All right. I'm gonna go ahead and we're gonna have the cleanup conversation. Are you guys ready for this?
Yep.
I will try to make it as brief as possible since we're running low on time. This is the breakdown from last year. I'm gonna stand up so I can actually look at this. Just quick stats. I did a quick average of what we made per bin versus how much we brought in. Now, these numbers are not including any kind of reimbursement from Southeast Uplift. These are just straight what neighbors donated, how much it cost us to dump the garbage. Without any reimbursement, we were coming in at a loss per bin of over $70. So we have to raise our prices. We still need to keep them accessible, but we haven't raised them in a long time, so we need to do that.
I don't think
So-
we've raised them in a decade.
I've come up with 2 tiers. Tier 1 is the gentlest increase, but only nets us about $34 per bin on average. The second one is still pretty reasonable, coming in at a little over $100 per bin. Of course, these are suggested donations. We don't turn anybody away. People can pay what they can afford or not at all, because this is a community service. But I would like a sense from the board on which one you'd like, so that we can have we can start getting materials ready. Tina?
So what I've said to several people after looking this over, I really, really like Tier 2, and this is why. We have 3 real economic groups in our neighborhood. We have those that really can comfortably, easily hand over, not think twice about Tier 2. They're happy, they've gotten a recommendation, they'll hand it over, no problem. The middle group say, well, I can afford that, they're not going to complain about it, but they'll do it. And then we've got the poor people who are struggling to make food hit the table, that know that they're not going to be turned away, they'll pay what they can.
And we will advertise that you will not be
So I
turned
think those that
away.
can't do it, and those that can, that won't think twice about it, will hit that nice middle ground in a peaceful way, and still be in the black instead of the red.
Do we have more discussion on that?
Much better than Tier 1.
Tier 2. That makes sense.
It's also a nice revenue increase in $30.
Yep. Yeah. For some reason, trailers were significantly cheaper than cars in our old pricing tiers, so I tried to kind of make it more of like how much garbage we're actually getting per vehicle. Okay, so is there any opposition to going with Tier 2 for our pricing this year? Okay, so with that in mind, I think we've decided to do the cleanup for sure, and I'll kind of take head on that project, and we'll figure out someone to go to the kickoff meeting. We can use a lot of the materials from last year, so our cost will be a little bit lower as far as the other estimated costs we had going in last year.
We need more bins, so we need to go long.
Yes. So we will get rotating bins this year. We will need to book as quickly as possible with our ECR guy.
Right.
And if he's not available, I met the owner of City Sanitary at the Woodstock Business Association, and he has also said that if we put in one of those big aggregate garbage cans, his company will dump it for us for free, like Woodstock. So let's think about where we want one of those.
If someone else, not me,
Oh.
sorry, wanted to be the lead on that, would you fight them for it?
No. We learned a lot last year, and I have the materials, so I'm happy to kind of head the project and happily delegate as much as possible.
Okay.
Any other events? Garrett, you're standing right.
Oh, I'm so. I didn't realize we were recording.
We have new brochures. Please take them off the table. They have our regional flexible funds map in it.
Yeah.
Share with your neighbors and
Derek.
yay, Derek!
Around the block.
Also magnets. Give to your neighbors. I already showed our events. Volunteer, attend, donate. Don't make me do it all by myself. Not that you guys do. Tell your neighbors, is there anything else for events and outreach, Derek?
We talked about doing the insert.
Yes, so we're working on an insert. Southeast Uplift I have sent an email to Moose and Gabby to get a new donation link for PayPal. It's not working for some reason. So as soon as they send that back to us, I will have new inserts. Derek had the idea of events on one side and donate on the back. So I've got a donate page ready to go. I just need to get a working link, and for
Right.
whatever reason they're.
And then we'd have those, when it's ready, printed up as cardstock. I could put it in a brochure that goes up to the neighbors, but then we have additional, again, like the big cardstock that you can hand to people that they can donate
Yeah.
easily. Just like all the other people that are PayPal or whatever, you know.
And like our brentwood-darlington.org/shop for our swag shop, it'll be a /donate link. So they'll be able to go to our site and click a link that'll take them to PayPal.
Or they can just
So.
give us money.
Yes.
Like if I just, like
Yeah.
Rob, if you just wanna give $20, you can just go follow the link and give $20.
Exactly. You can also set
Yeah.
it up for recurring donation, so that's
Yeah.
something we can encourage neighbors to do. So, that is all I have, and I hope to see lots of you at the committee's meeting on the 19th, I think.
Yeah.
So, all right, anything else, board members?